Nick, as the head of product for ChatGPT, what are your top insane ChatGPT hacks?
You can turn this into the most viral LinkedIn post ever.
And we plan to.
We're going to, yeah.
Yes. Well, Casey, we have a birthday to celebrate today.
Oh my God, I'm sorry I didn't get you anything.
It's not my birthday. It's ChatGPT's birthday. The popular app is 2 years old as of this month. And I would say it had a pretty eventful first 2 years of its life.
Yeah, this was one of the biggest launches of a new piece of technology that we've seen in a long time. And I would argue is probably the biggest launch since we started this podcast.
Oh, for sure. And not only is it big in our world, it is also big in the world at large. According to SimilarWeb, ChatGPT is now the 8th most visited website in the world. It has millions and millions of users, and it has even become a verb. In fact, I recently heard a college student say that they were going to chat something rather than Googling it. So this is clearly a profound and important product. Whatever you think of generative AI, it has already had a ton of implications for the tech industry and for people's lives around the world. But we haven't actually dug deep into the product in a while, and it has been changing a lot. So today, we've invited on Nick Turley. Nick Turley is the head of product at OpenAI for ChatGPT. He's been at the company since before ChatGPT launched, and he has a lot of interesting thoughts about how the product has evolved over the last 2 years and where it's going next.
Let's bring him in.
Before we do, we should make our traditional caveat every time we talk about this company. The New York Times is suing OpenAI and Microsoft for copyright infringement. Nick Turley, welcome to Hard Fork.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start by rewinding back 2 years to November of 2022. You're about to release this thing called ChatGPT into the world. What did you think was going to happen when it was released?
Yeah, we'd been playing with ChatGPT internally. We had a version of it. We called it the Chat Playground, and none of us thought it would be a product. So we had very, very, tempered expectations toward this thing, and but we wanted to get it out. It was very important. I think we went it was a 10-day sprint from deciding to launch this externally to actually doing so. So everyone was pretty heads down, and the reason for that was that we really wanted the learnings back when we came back from the holiday. If we'd known it was going to be a takeoff product in any way, we would certainly not have done it right before everyone was leaving to go on break and see their families, etc.
So what was the moment that you first realized, oh, wow, this thing seems to be resonating with people more than we'd expected?
It was the next day because, this is probably a classic story for any product that takes off, but I thought the dashboard was broken because we'd taken sort of these over or under bets with the team that, how people would ever try it. I think the sort of outlier bet was 100,000 users would ever try it or something like that. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm from a small rural town or 30,000 person town in northern Germany. And I remember going home 2 weeks later. And normally it's a very serene environment where, that world doesn't interact with my Silicon Valley world and kind of like it that way. But this time, I remember the kids, the neighbor kids, were talking about ChatGPT already. And it was 2 weeks later and it was unprompted. Like I didn't even ask them. And I was like, wow, worlds colliding. This thing really is going around the world. So that's probably when I viscerally felt it. But I saw it in the data like on day 2.
So I think, a lot of people that I talked to, they tried ChatGPT when it came out. It blew their minds. They tried a bunch of different prompts, and then maybe it sort of didn't work its way into their daily routine. Maybe their usage has sort of trailed off a little bit. If someone's last experience with ChatGPT was back in, call it late 2022, and they went back today and revisited it, what do you think the biggest differences they would notice are?
Amazing. Yeah. If I think about some of the big things that have happened, GPT-4 was like the first big update we made to the product, right? And what users noticed was it's just much more creative, and it just feels smarter. And then there's all these capabilities that we built on top of GPT-4 because GPT-4 was so smart. So for the first time ever, it could browse the web. It could actually run code, which is not something that most consumers care about. But what that means for you as a user is that it can actually crunch numbers, which historically the first version was really bad at. It was bad at math, any type of analysis or calculation. It could suddenly do it because GPT-4 was smart enough to literally run very, very reliable code for you, which is a nice kind of connection of these large language models with traditional computers. Later that year, we started venturing into multimodality, which is our term for giving it inputs other than text to play with. So it could start generating images. It could start viewing images. We launched our first voice mode. which allowed you to talk to the model. So I think year one was really the year of all these new capabilities that were unlocked by GPT-4 and related innovations. Year two was we kind of saw this interesting consolidation where all these new capabilities came into one model, which we call GPT-4o. And that model was itself, it was anything in, anything out. And the way that feels is that you could just talk to ChatGPT in an incredibly natural way. Like the new voice mode that we launched earlier this year, it's a completely different way of using ChatGPT because it's your companion. You can have a real conversation with this thing. And then most recently, and I think this is maybe the rawest form of ChatGPT or the rawest evolution, is it started to reason for you, which basically means it thinks before it can speak, or it thinks before speaking, which we very much value in humans.
It almost never happens on a podcast,
but no, you get the raw chain of thought, as we call it, right? Yeah, that's right.
There have been a few studies recently of these kind of large sets of transcripts from AI chatbots, including ChatGPT. Basically, researchers trying to figure out what are people actually using these things for. And it seems like these researchers are finding that the most popular use cases are number one, doing homework. Number two, sexual role play, and then all the other use cases. Does that match your own understanding of how people are using ChatGPT?
For us, the order, and obviously this varies about different products. For example, there's these like character products. ChatGPT is very much not that. It's I always describe our use cases as worky. They're not necessarily at work, though. I think we are in like 90% of Fortune 500 companies or something like that, something crazy. But it's worky stuff. It's like I'm trying to get something done. So, there's other products out there that, will skew the distribution of use cases. For us, I think the ranking is question answering. That's how everyone gets started. I just ask, and that just got better with search. So I think see an increase in that. It's the most relatable use case for many people. Then writing, that both, can be like, hey, draft this tricky text that I don't know how to send. Or, hey, I wrote this email, but, English is my second language. Can you please edit it? Then it's coding. We have a huge base of people doing technical things. That includes beginners who are learning how to program, and also, experts who are looking to debug what they're working on, or they're running something Excel and it's not working. And then it's a long tail of other things.
Have there been any popular use cases that you didn't expect or that really surprised you?
So many. Cooking was a really interesting one because I got into cooking just as, ChatGPT was happening too. And I was like, this is amazing that you can just like sub out, oh, I'm missing this ingredient, and it'll just like slightly modify the recipe for you in a way that, I probably would have called my parents. I still do, but I don't have to bug them anymore. A lot of people use it as kind of a coach or self-improvement tool. This has been really striking to me, actually. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen these trends of like, what's this one piece of advice you'd give me based on all my interactions, or give me an image that represents our life or my life or something. And I've actually, a lot of people use it to kind of process. I do this actually on my way to work every morning. I, when I'm in the car, I talk to it and I just give it a bunch of unstructured thoughts of everything that needs to get done and have it repeated back to me. So it's almost having this like kind of second brain or coach thing that surprised me, both in my own usage and what I've been seeing with other people, because it's really kind of helping people be a better version of themselves. And I think
say more about what you get back out of that. It sort of like distills everything that you've told. I mean, are you doing that because you sort of want to get like a to-do list, or like what is it giving you?
Kind of. I wanted to sort of help me structure my own thoughts. I kind of ramble at it, and by the time I finish the call with it, in part because it's getting me to talk probably, and in part because it's actually repeating back to me, okay, here are like priorities I'm hearing. And I'm like, no, that's not right. Like the fourth one, actually scratch that. I have this like ready to go list of what my day is going to look like. So I think it's some combination of getting me to talk and and actually, producing a tight list of stuff to do.
Yeah. So I have been talked about this a few times, but over the past month, I have been meditating more, and I have been chatting with a chatbot, and it has been coaching me, and it is incredible. It is this journal that talks back to me now. So it's not just me like processing my own thoughts. It is something that has a vast body of knowledge about this very particular subject, and it's able to say, here are some new things that you can try. So this is something that I feel like most people have not caught on to yet, but more people should try.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the trajectory here. You've sort of described over the past couple of years how ChatGPT has grown more capable. It can work in different modalities. But give us a sense of where all of this is going. Will ChatGPT always be a box we type into, or where do you think it will be in 2 years from now, let's say?
Yeah. First of all, what I'm about to say, I say it with a lot of humility because I hope the birth
Also
story.
rare for a podcast, by the way, but go on.
Rare for a
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
I've been so wrong, and I tend to underestimate how quickly things are moving, even myself. I think there's going to be a few evolutions. The first one we really saw, the last couple of years, it's been an era of asking questions to the AI, and you can ask increasingly, interesting questions, get increasingly better answers. You can ask them in new ways, including voice, including with vision. You can get different types of answers, including images and including voice itself, right? But fundamentally, it's been this interaction paradigm where I'm asking and I'm getting something back. But when I look at where the technology is going, we have really, really smart models now. And in a certain sense, I think chat under leverages what they're capable of. And what we're going to see instead, I think, is tasks. Like you delegate to this AI and it goes off and does stuff for you. And, this idea isn't new. People have been talking about, agents for a couple years now. People even say they're building them, and it's true. You can kind of build these things already in certain domains, and it reminds me of how building chatbots felt before we had the right technology, where you could sort of do it, but they weren't really good and they weren't reliable. And I think by having these really smart models out there, and our O1 model is an incredibly smart model. I think you can build reliable tasks for the first time where it goes off and does something, whether or not it's planning a full trip for you, whether or not it's finding you, the best shoes under $300 that are, made in the US, whether or not it's, coding an application for you, running a data analysis for you. I think it'll be able to go off for 30 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe even longer, and do this stuff. And the reason that this is possible now versus a year ago is that the models are smart enough to deal with all the edge cases that they're going to run into, right? This is why it's so hard to build these things, is you encounter things in the wild, like, the shoes were sold out, or in the coding case, it didn't compile, it didn't run, and now what?
You're reminding me of the evolution of self-driving cars. Like a decade ago, when I would test a self-driving car, I would go down to Google headquarters and they'd put me on a track that a car had already gone around probably thousands of times before. They knew every single edge case in that particular parking lot, and it was super cool, but it could not really do anything that was not on that track. And then bit by bit, they started testing them on more and more roads. They started gathering more and more edge cases. And now, when we leave today, we could order a Waymo and take it anywhere. It sounds like agents are just sort of a little bit behind in that process, but the basic logic is the same, and you're driving toward a similar outcome.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it's a really good analogy. And even within, if you accept that, if you believe that that's what the evolution's gonna be, I think there's still the same kind of big fundamental questions that people have in self-driving cars, which is like, is the future a world where this gradually gets better and it like takes over more and more, and I don't have to touch the steering wheel as often anymore? Or is it this thing that is fully autonomous, but it's only going to work for certain use cases? Like there's these different paths you can take. And we're trying to figure out too, what is the right path, because, we want the human to be in control. We want these things to be reliable and useful and safe. And I think you're going to have the same questions that you have in self-driving in terms of how to actually get there. But I think the end state is very, very apparent, at least to me. And I think many people working on this stuff, the question is how fast and what's the path?
Yeah.
We talk to a lot of educators, teachers, people who are excited about tools like ChatGPT, but also a lot of people who are worried about them. This was obviously a major early use case of ChatGPT, was students using this to write their essays, do their problem sets, do their homework. So I want to ask you about that, but in particular, I want to ask you that the Wall Street Journal reported earlier this year that OpenAI had developed a tool internally for watermarking text, basically a system where you could take a piece of text and tell with something like 99.9% accuracy whether it had been written by ChatGPT. The journal reported that had not been rolled out after a lot of internal debate. Can you tell us more about that watermarking tool and why you haven't rolled it out?
I'm very much not the expert on this area. We have done research on this on this stuff. In the case of images, we rolled out ways to detect whether or not images came from DALL-E, and it remains an area of research. The thing that I will say, some of the considerations that go into stuff like this are, on the one hand, you want to be able to tell if people used AI. On the other hand, there are many legitimate use cases. Maybe you're using your English as your second language and use it to edit your cover letter. In which case you maybe wouldn't want people to know that you use ChatGPT. I'm personally not sure, both about how good the detection tools can get and about what the right thing to do is in terms of who gets access to detection tools, et cetera. But it's something we research, and I'm on the product side and therefore don't know the latest.
Do you, I guess, just without getting into the specifics of that watermarking tool, do you feel like ChatGPT has any sort of responsibility to the people who use it and the people who may be trying to pass off AI-generated work as original work, given that this has become a big use case of the product?
Yeah. First of all, we feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to our users, our non-users, broader world in the ecosystem, right? Everyone is affected by this technology. And we've generally found that the best thing we can do, given that this technology will evolve with us or without us, is to release it iteratively to the world and to start the right conversations and to be as gradual and thoughtful as we can in the way that we introduce this stuff. I very much believe that this technology is a tool for people, right? We need to put people in control about how they want to use this stuff. That is true if you're using it for art. It's a tool for an artist. It's not an artist. And that's, it's the same thing when you're writing it, when you're writing stuff. This is not anything other than a calculator for words. And that is how I think we should treat it, which means that the onus should be on the people using the technology in the same way that we've treated any other tool.
So the other thing that we'll hear from educators often is not specifically about cheating. I think a lot of schools are starting to move past the kind of panic that ChatGPT is just going to lead to an outbreak of cheating and plagiarism. But there are some longer term concerns that people have about the fact that students may be using this kind of technology to short circuit their thinking process. That if you have a chatbot that can teach you everything you need to know about Chaucer, you don't have to do the work of thinking through it yourself. Is that concerning to you?
Yeah. First of all, it's something that absolutely concerns me. It's something I think about a lot. The way it makes me feel is I was in I think middle school when Wikipedia came out, and it was a shock to our teachers, far smaller of a shock than I think ChatGPT, the grand scheme of things. But there was a lot of conversation. Is going to the library dead? Are people going to lose their research skills? This is not a legitimate source. We ought to teach people the right way to do this. And I think the forward-looking teachers at the time, they were started to bring Wikipedia into the classroom as a way of discussing what does it mean for a source to be reliable? Let's look at Wikipedia. Now let's look at a reliable source. Let's find the gap. And in the same way, I do see many teachers now bringing ChatGPT into their classroom. Like some of the coolest examples I've seen is, examples where students create their first draft without the help of ChatGPT. Then they submit another draft that, has them edit it with ChatGPT and explain what they learned from the edit. And then there's the final version, right? And in the same way that I think we've, integrated calculators, we've integrated other tools that were pretty disruptive and could be abused for, undue shortcuts. I think ChatGPT is going to end up being the same. The thing I want to acknowledge is that all this is happening so quickly that I think many teachers just don't have the opportunity to, talk to other teachers to, figure out, okay, how are we going to evolve our lesson plan to use this stuff in a way that is exciting and empowering. Personally, I still believe that in net, this has been amazing for students because the thing you have to keep in mind is that there's people all around the world that don't have, educational resources. Even for me, in the German public school system that I grew up in, people rarely read my homework. And I often imagine what would have happened if someone had actually read my homework. It would have been probably beneficial to my learning in some way. And so I think in net,
wait, your teachers didn't read your homework?
Our teachers were very, very busy, and homework was oftentimes the thing you submitted, and then it was graded on completion.
This doesn't sound like that good of a system to me. I hate to say it.
I came out okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm
That's
very
actually a
grateful.
good point.
I'm overall very grateful to the system, but I'm just saying that I wish I'd had this as a kid.
Yeah. I want to ask about another debate that it seems like has really heated up just over the past few days, and it is about whether as companies like yours work to build these new models, they may be approaching the limits of what are sometimes called scaling laws, the idea that as you pour more compute and data into networks, systems like ChatGPT get radically more capable. Do you have a sense that we may be approaching a plateau here in what we can get out of large language models just by making them larger? And is that a problem for you?
Yeah, this keeps coming up. This is my take as a product person. I'm very much not an AI genius, but I'm around this stuff. And I'll say this thought comes up from time to time. In fact, I think we had this thought when I first showed up at OpenAI, because I remember when GPT-4 wasn't useful and we were wondering, oh man, is something go wrong? And then it didn't, and we figured it out. So this stuff is science. It's open-ended. There's many scientific questions about how to scale these models. For us, we feel like we've stumbled on a new paradigm. The O1 model really changes the way that we think about scaling these models, because you now can you can scale the amount of thinking it does as it responds. Like for the first time, you can have this thing actually think really, really hard about something, give you a better answer. And that's an entirely new paradigm that we're just beginning to explore. We're just beginning to productize. And we're just beginning to scale up. So I'm actually very excited about where we are.
So is the basic idea that even if this one technique that had been the main technique for making large language models more capable over the past few years starts to slow in terms of the rate of improvement, you also have developed many other techniques for getting more out of these models that you are actually just starting to explore?
That's right. We're really at the beginning of the reasoning era. Not the end, and there's so much to explore there.
On the reasoning point, Can you give some ideas for, let's say, 2 writers for what they should actually be doing with this model? Because I have not been able to figure out anything to have the reasoning model do that I can't already get from the normal model. Is it just none of my business, Nick?
No, it's everyone's business.
Oh, okay.
It's everyone's business. This gets back to the same problem that we had when we first launched ChatGPT, where like nobody knows what it's really capable of, and we have to find out together. I say this in all earnestness. We do so much before we launch these models now. We red team them, we show it to experts. It's becoming a exploratory exercise for many of us to figure out what this stuff is capable of. For me, I found it to be really, really useful at things, and there's not very many of these things where I know more than most people. I'm a generalist, but I happen to know more than some about jazz theory. So I had it reharmonize a song, which I won't bore you with what that is, but it's like something that I happen to be really interested in, and I realized it is much, much smarter than the average model.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, because I'd like to hear what ChatGPT actually does when you say, hey, reharmonize this.
Yeah, I give it the chords, and I'm like, okay, what are other ways to express these chords that would sound more funky, more like modern jazz, that still work and like resolve at the end? So I'm having it, kind of change the chord structure of the song, and then I sit down at the piano and I try it out. So that's like one, it's an area where I have a niche interest, where I'm probably, better than most humans at it. And I think the challenge with smarter than human models in many cases is that you got to find an area where, you can actually assess whether or not the model is, just equally good, worse, or really, really smart.
I have a lot of expertise in giving harsh feedback to Kevin. And so what you have me thinking about is, could I actually use it to give even harsher feedback?
Well, I'll get ready for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna use O1 to process your feedback and put it into a format that I can more easily accept without my ego shattering.
Sounds perfect.
So we can just have like a sort of battle of the AIs there. Nick, another question we get all the time from listeners and readers is about the environmental impact of ChatGPT. This is a big question. There's some people who believe that this is, you're pouring out a bottle of water every time you ask ChatGPT a question or something like that. So can you settle this for us? How bad is ChatGPT for the environment?
I don't know. Very much not an expert on this field. The thing I do know is that, the costs keep coming down, the efficiency keeps going up. We wouldn't be, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have been able to serve all the users that we have today. You probably remember the time when ChatGPT was down all the time. It was a very unique era for all of us, including the team. So it's gotten a lot more efficient, and it will continue to do so. But I don't know the exact economics. We'd have to ask someone.
Okay, we'd like to close, Nick, with a game. I'm sure you've been seeing all of the people posting on LinkedIn and X and Threads about their insane ways that you're not getting enough out of ChatGPT, and with these hacks, you could just become the ultimate ChatGPT power user. This has become sort of a meme among the hustle bros of America. Nick, as the head of product for ChatGPT, what are your top insane ChatGPT hacks?
You could turn this into the most viral LinkedIn post ever.
And we plan to.
We're going to, yeah.
Yes.
Few things. Really, really experiment with voice. It is a completely different way of using ChatGPT. It is it's never existed before. It's like unlike anything else you will have tried in technology. It takes a little bit getting used to.
The voice mode, specifically.
But put your AirPods in, go on a walk, try to use it in the car. I really recommend trying this out. Second, leverage memory. You can tell it to remember stuff. You don't have to wait for it to infer it about you. You can just tell it all the stuff that you want remembered. It can be your job. It can be your family situation. It can be your preferences on how it should respond to you. It can be, your favorite food. Stuff that you wanted to know. The effort will be worth it because memory is just going to keep getting better, and it's already there in many cases. Third, if that's not enough, you can make a GPT. People actually do this for a variety of reasons, but in many cases, if you have this prompt you're reusing all the time, make a GPT for yourself. You don't even have to share it with others. It's super easy, takes seconds, and it allows you to customize everything that you want about your ChatGPT. Try uploading files. It's pretty phenomenal. If you've got a really long, paper to read, if you've got, a handbook you're trying to process, etc. A lot of people don't know this exists, and it's really, really powerful. And then fifth, images in, images out. I find that there's text people and there's image people, and they almost don't overlap. Where some people in my family think the text is the coolest thing about ChatGPT, and some think that the image generation is the coolest thing. And I wish there was a bit more cross pollination between people, because there's a lot of cool stuff you're working on a birthday card. You're probably going to want to use both. Make a little custom image and work on a cute little poem. So you can combine all these things in a way that I think most people don't understand. So those are a few. I don't think any of those are rocket science. I'm learning as much as you all are from observing what people do in the wild. So I always click on these posts. They get me every time. And sometimes I do learn something new.
All right. Well, Nick, thanks so much for coming by.
Thanks,
Nick.
for
having me. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, that's the end of this clip. If you liked what you saw, head on over to our page and subscribe, and you can get the full podcast. We do a show like this almost every week on tech and the future. Head on over there now and subscribe.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, with a great deal of pride and pleasure, I present to you Electro, the Westinghouse Moto Man. All right, now, Electro, I know you enjoy these, and I'm really going to try to give you a nice pleasure out of these. So here you are. You got that? Now hold on to it. You may now smoke this cigarette. Go on. Oh, yes, Electro, you do need a light too, don't you? All right, here you are. And folks, he's only 2 years old too. Just learning.